Fascinating story in the Talmud about how it is that the Torah came to be translated into the Greek language, a very ancient translation called the Septuagint, the translation of the 70 sages. There was a great Greek king called Ptolemy, who was a very educated man, and in his library he had volumes of all of the different studies of his generation. The only thing he was missing was the Torah, the Jewish Bible. He gathered together a group of 70 sages. He put each one into a separate room, and he came to them and he said, I want you to translate the Torah into Greek, but you cannot consult with one another, and I want to see how the translation will come out. The Talmud tells us that miraculously, they all came out with precisely the same translation. And of course, as the saying goes, things are lost in translation, and you can't get across some of the subtle nuances. Also, there were certain things that they had to change, because if they would leave it in the original idiom and the original expression in the Hebrew, it wouldn't move across very well into Greek. One of the first verses that was really challenging when it came to their translation was a verse in Parshat Bereishit, where God says, Naaseh Adam b'tzelmeinu, let us make man in our image. God had created the world, the heavens, the earth, the water, the fish, the animals, and all that was left to do now was man. And he says, let us make man. The question, of course, is, who's us? Let us make man. There's no us, there's just God. So when the sages translated from the Hebrew to the Greek, they put it in the singular. I will make man, instead of let us make man. Because by leaving it in the plural could have caused a great deal of problems. People would begin to think perhaps there's more than one God. So they put it into the singular. But the question remains, what did God mean when he said, Naaseh Adam, let us make man? Who is the us? Some commentators tell us that really who God is speaking to is us, human beings. Let us make man. Let's make man together. I'll provide all of the material. I'll provide the body and I'll provide the soul. But we have to do it together. I'm not making man perfect. Each and every one of you has to be a partner with me in making man. But let's look at the explanation of Rashi, which is a most unbelievable explanation. Rashi says that God was speaking to the angels. And he said to them, let us make man, let's do it together. He was asking for their opinion. The angels may be upset. Suddenly there was somebody who was going to, if you like, be a competitor to them. Somebody who had intelligence and understanding and ability of speech. So God consults with him and says, let's make man together. What do you think about this project? From this, says Rashi, we learn a very valuable lesson. That when you're about to do something, you should always consult with your inferiors. Even if perhaps you're not going to take their opinion into account, but they're part of your team. And you should consult with them. Now, certainly God didn't need the advice of the angels. He was going to make man regardless of what they said. But he specifically asked their opinion to teach us this lesson of derech eretz, basic behavior. He would rather have put into the Torah the plural, let us make man, which would lead to a great deal of understanding, than not teach us this vital lesson of how to behave, of derech eretz. And indeed, this concept of derech eretz, proper behavior, how to be a mensch, is hinted to in the parasha. When Adam and Eve are expelled from paradise, it says that God placed their angels to guard derech eitz hachayim, the way to the tree of life. Explains the Talmud that eitz hachayim means the Torah, and the word derech, the way to the Torah, means derech eretz, proper behavior. How do we conduct ourselves in this world? And you'll see that derech comes before eitz hachayim. Proper behavior comes before the Torah. Hence the famous words of our sages, kadma derech eretz leTorah, that before one can come to Torah wisdom, one has to understand how to behave with people. One has to have what we would call menschlichkeit. How do you speak to people? How do you look after yourself? Your own hygiene. Everything about living as a person in society is included in derech eretz. And indeed the Rambam tells us this also in the laws of learning Torah. He says that you mustn't just accept any person to come and study in a yeshiva. You have to look at the person. Do they behave properly? Are they upright? Do they have derech eretz? Do they have menschlichkeit? And if they don't, well, you better go and teach them. And then afterwards, you can teach them Torah. So from this subtle change, or this subtle difference in the parasha, where God says, let us make man, we learn such an important lesson. To always consult with those who are inferior with us, to include them in our decisions, because that is one of the ways in which we get on with people. And if we can't get on with people, we're certainly not going to be able to come onto the wisdom, the sublime wisdom of the Torah. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.